A wealthy businessman steps into a small diner late in the evening. His polished shoes tap against the tiled floor as he walks to an empty booth. The scent of fresh coffee and grilled food fills the air. He sighs, loosening his tie, exhausted from a long day of meetings and phone calls. The waiter approaches, handing him a menu. Before placing his order, something catches his eye. At the far corner of the diner, a man sits alone. His clothes are worn out, layered unevenly to fight the cold. His hands are rough and covered in dirt, his face lined with exhaustion. His eyes scan the menu, but his expression is one of hesitation, not excitement. The businessman watches as the man slowly reaches into his pocket, pulling out a few coins. He counts them carefully, lips pressing together in frustration. It's clear. He doesn't have enough for a full meal. The businessman glances at his own leather wallet, packed with cash and cards. For him, a meal is nothing, a routine expense. But for the man in the corner, it seems like a luxury he can't afford. Without thinking twice, he signals the waiter and makes a quiet request. The businessman leans slightly toward the waiter and speaks in a low voice. Whatever he orders, put it on my bill. Don't tell him who paid. The waiter nods, understanding the request. He walks over to the homeless man, who is still hesitating, staring at the menu as if hoping the prices might change. What can I get for you? The waiter asks. The homeless man glances up, his fingers still gripping the few coins in his hand. Just a coffee, he says, his voice rough, tired. The waiter pauses, then smiles. How about something to eat? Don't worry about the cost. The man looks confused. His fingers tighten around the coins. I don't have enough. It's already covered, the waiter assures him. A customer wanted to help. The homeless man's lips part slightly in surprise. He looks around the diner but sees no one paying attention to him. After a moment he nods. A sandwich maybe? How about a full meal? On the house. The homeless man swallows hard, his eyes glistening. He nods again. Thank you. Minutes later, a plate of warm food arrives. The rich man watches from his seat as the homeless man takes slow, careful bites, as if savoring every flavor. Then, something unexpected happens. The homeless man finishes his meal, stands up, and walks straight toward the businessman's table. The businessman looks up as the homeless man stops beside his table. Was it you? The man asks, his voice soft but firm. The businessman hesitates for a second, then nods. Yeah. I just thought you could use a meal. The homeless man studies him for a moment, then pulls out a chair. Mind if I sit? The businessman gestures to the seat across from him. Go ahead. The homeless man exhales deeply as he settles in. I appreciate what you did. Most people just ignore me. The businessman shrugs. It was nothing. The homeless man shakes his head. To you maybe, but to me, it's been a while since someone showed kindness. He pauses, then looks down at his rough hands. I wasn't always like this, you know. The businessman leans forward, interested. What happened? The homeless man hesitates, as if deciding how much to say. Then he sighs. I had a good life once, a home, a family, a business. He looks up, his eyes distant. I lost it all. The businessman frowns. How? The homeless man runs a hand over his tired face. Made a few bad financial choices, trusted the wrong people, got into debt. One thing led to another and, well, here I am. The businessman listens intently, something about the man's story tugging at him. What kind of business? He asks. The homeless man hesitates. A small company. I started it from nothing. Grew it up over the years. But when things got tough, I had to sell it for almost nothing, just to survive. The businessman's heart beats a little faster. He shifts in his seat. What was it called? The homeless man gives a small sad smile. Ever heard of Harper Industries? The businessman's breath catches in his throat. He has more than just heard of it. He bought it. The businessman freezes, gripping the edge of the table. Harper Industries. The name hits him like a punch to the chest. He knows it well, too well. Years ago, he bought the company when it was drowning in debt. It was a business move, just another deal. He never thought much about the people behind it. And now, the former owner is sitting across from him. Homeless. The homeless man doesn't notice his reaction at first. He stares at the tabletop, lost in thought. I put everything into that company, he says, his voice distant. Years of hard work. Thought it would last forever. But the market shifted, I made a few mistakes, and the debts piled up. The businessman swallows hard. He remembers the reports, the struggling company, the quick acquisition. He never questioned why the owner had sold it so cheap. I had no choice, the homeless man continues. I had a wife, a kid. I thought selling the company would save us. But it wasn't enough. We lost our home. My wife, she couldn't take it. She left, took our son with her. He lets out a bitter laugh. After that, I just fell apart. The businessman's throat tightens. He remembers looking at the company's old financial records. The name Harper was just a detail, a signature on a contract. He never thought about the man behind it. Now that man is sitting right in front of him, broken and defeated. The homeless man finally looks up, noticing the businessman's silence. Sorry, he says, shaking his head. Didn't mean to dump all that on you. I guess talking about it helps sometimes. The businessman exhales, trying to steady himself. I know Harper Industries, he admits, his voice quieter than before. The homeless man raises an eyebrow. Yeah? The businessman nods slowly. I own it now. Silence. The homeless man blinks. He stares at the businessman as if trying to process the words. You? What? The businessman clears his throat. I bought it years ago, when it went under. The homeless man leans back in his chair. His face goes pale, then unreadable. So you're the one who took it. The businessman shifts uncomfortably. I didn't know. I didn't know what happened to you. The homeless man exhales sharply. His hands tremble slightly as he rubs his temples. Guess that's how life works, huh? His tone is unreadable. Half amusement, half pain. One man's loss is another man's gain. The businessman looks at him, and for the first time, he doesn't just see a homeless man. He sees himself. A version of himself that could have existed if things had gone just a little differently. And suddenly, he knows what he has to do. The businessman takes a deep breath, his mind racing. For years he had seen Harper Industries as just another acquisition, another stepping stone in his success. He never thought about the man behind it, never considered what happened to him after the deal was done. But now, that man is sitting across from him, homeless, defeated, and it doesn't sit right. The homeless man lets out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. Guess that's life, he says, his voice rough. I worked day and night for that company, sacrificed everything, and now I don't even have a roof over my head. He sighs. But hey, at least it went to someone who could make it work. The businessman swallows. It wasn't fair. The homeless man shrugs. Fair or not, it happened. He looks down at his hands. I should have done things differently, should have been smarter, but once you're falling, it's hard to stop. He gives another bitter chuckle. You ever think about that? How close we all are to losing everything? The businessman stays silent, because yes, he has thought about it. Success always felt solid, permanent. But looking at the man in front of him, he realizes how fragile it really is. One wrong move, one bad investment, one unexpected crisis, and he could have been in the same place. He grips his coffee cup, his decision settling in his mind. Come work for me. The homeless man looks up, confused. What? The businessman leans forward. I mean it. You built Harper Industries from the ground up. You know business. You know struggle. That's more valuable than anything. The homeless man stares at him, processing. You're joking. I'm not. Silence stretches between them. The homeless man shifts in his chair, his hands tremble slightly. Why? The businessman exhales. Because I should have known your story before I took everything you built. Because I know you deserve another chance. He pauses, then adds, and because I think you're the kind of man who won't waste it. The homeless man lets out a shaky breath. I don't know what to say. Say yes. The homeless man rubs his face, his emotions raw. I don't even have clean clothes. The businessman waves a hand. That's easy to fix. I haven't worked in years. Doesn't matter, you built something once, you can do it again. The homeless man stares at him, his eyes glistening. Then finally he nods. Okay. The businessman smiles. Good. First thing tomorrow we'll get you set up. The homeless man shakes his head in disbelief. You really mean this? The businessman extends his hand. I do. Slowly, hesitantly, the homeless man reaches out and grips it. A firm handshake, a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, the homeless man feels something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. The next morning, the businessman picks up the homeless man outside the diner. For the first time in years, the man wears clean clothes. A simple button-up shirt, slacks, and a pair of shoes. Nothing fancy, but enough to make him feel different. They drive in silence at first. The homeless man, no Harper, he reminds himself, stares out the window watching the city move past. It feels surreal. Just yesterday he was counting coins for a meal. Now he's heading to an office. Nervous? The businessman asks. Harper exhales. Yeah. The businessman smirks. Good. That means you care. When they arrive at the office, Harper hesitates at the entrance. He looks at the tall glass building, the people in suits rushing inside. For years, this world felt out of reach. Now, he's stepping back into it. He clenches his fists. You built something before. You can do it again. Inside, the businessman leads him to a small office. It's yours, he says. For now, I want you to start small. Get back into things. No pressure. Harper runs a hand over the desk. It's been years since he sat in a real office, since he's had a purpose. He turns to the businessman. I won't let you down. The businessman nods. I know you won't. Harper works hard. Every day he arrives early and stays late. He studies new market trends, catches up on industry shifts, and reconnects with old skills. The businessman checks on him often. At first it's out of concern, but soon it's out of admiration. Harper isn't just doing well, he's thriving. His experience, his struggles, his resilience, it all shapes the way he works. He knows how to solve problems because he's lived them. And the businessman realizes something important. Harper isn't just a former CEO, he's a leader. Months later, they meet at the same diner, the place where it all started. This time, Harper sits with confidence. His clothes fit better, his eyes look brighter. He isn't the same man who once counted coins for a meal. When the bill arrives, he reaches for it before the businessman can. This one's on me, Harper says, sliding his card onto the table. The businessman chuckles. You sure? Harper nods. Yeah, it's my turn. The businessman watches as the waiter takes the card. He smiles, a small act, a simple meal. But for Harper, it means everything. Because now, he isn't just surviving, he's back.